I'm Bobby Ibrar, based in London, and this is my story. So in 2019, I developed chest pains and shortness of breath. I just turned 40, and that's when I started to get sick. It started up on the 28th of November 2019. I woke up with a foot drop. The foot drop then led to kidney stones, and then epilepsy. I started to have seizures. Um, and then after that, my pancreas started to play up. So I couldn't actually digest my food. Once we thought over the pancreas issues, then we had to sort out the epilepsy. Once the epilepsy was sorted, then we had to get on to the big job, which was the heart. I was having these heart conditions, the chest pain, shoulders of breath, dizziness, but yet work out what's going on. I previously didn't have any problems with my heart, and nor do I have a family history of heart problems. But for me, it was just going back and forward to the NHS, the doctors, finding out what's going on, and yet we couldn't find out. So every time I would have these episodes, I would have to go into a hospital, they'd check my oxygen saturation and say, well, you're not short of breath, and your ECG seems to be fine. What I actually needed was intensive care, but no one was there to do it for me. So what I did then was I applied for a tourism visa in India, where I met a cardiologist who did an angiography, which she thought I had a blockage in my heart. It turns out that I didn't have a blockage, but I was very disappointed to find out I didn't have a blockage in my heart. Because if I had this blockage, then we could have removed it and I could get on with my life. So the blockage wasn't there. But what she did find was a myocardial ridge, which is basically if you were watering your garden and I came from behind you and put my foot on the hose pipe and it could just spit out instead of to be a full flow. That's what happened to my heart. So when I would get stressed, would I be so myself, going up the stairs, carrying the cabby, I would find that I would become short of breath. Even talking, I couldn't complete a sentence without coming short of breath. So the doctor in India diagnosed me with a myocardial bridge and put me on some medications and set me on my way. I came back to the UK, couldn't wait to show everyone the outcome that I actually received. At this time, I was suffering this problem for about 3 years. So I was almost bedbound 3 years. And yet the consultant in India had suggested that if I was to go back to the UK and see how I get on with my medication. When I got back to the UK, literally, I think it was within 3 months that my medication stopped working. I was so disappointed. It was like we've gone backwards. Yet, before all this happened, I was a successful businessman. I had 22 staff working for me. And now I'm back in my bed again, bedbound. So I was referred to a doctor in Hammersmith in London. I didn't live in London at the time, but I lived out of London. And what happened was he said he was quite happy for me to be on this medication that the Indian doctor had recommended for me. But then what actually happened was the medication stopped working. So he referred me to the thoracic surgeons at the Hammersmith Hospital, who did say that they would do an operation on me, but it could take up to 4 years. If you work it out, what they were trying to do was put me on different sorts of medications. But the problem was, I can tell you within 2 to 4 weeks if that medication is going to work on me. And yet my appointment would take up to 9 months. So for 8 months, I'd be sitting around in bed waiting for my next appointment. So this would have taken a very long time. There was numerous amount of medications that I could try. but it was taking such a long time. And plus, we just came out of COVID as well. So I spoke to the Indian cardiologist again. She recommended that I speak to a thoracic surgeon in India. So I did, and he said to come over and we'll have a chat. Those were his words. So no operation, nothing promised. So I go over to India, and then he decides that I don't actually need the operation. What I need is more medication, just like the way they said in the UK. So, but the thing with this one was we were trying medications really quickly and moving on to the next one. And then if that one wasn't working, we were jumping on to the next one. But I knew pretty much almost straight away that these medications were not working for me. My doctor in India said, well, there's one more test we can do, an exercise tolerance test, where they kind of put you on a treadmill and make you run with all these leads and masks. And then they do a CT scan beforehand, and then they do a CT scan after scan. And then that shows you how much blood, oxygenated blood, is getting to the rest of the heart. It showed after my test that I did have ischemia on exertion. And that's why the bypass was performed. And at the time I had the bypass, I was in intensive care in India. I went all by myself. I was scared. I didn't have anyone with me. And to have such a big operation and to be bedbound again, but all by myself in a country that's, 6,000 miles away from here. Very difficult, but we did it. They were very helpful. So I came back to the UK, and then what we decided was that I would start doing my light exercises. And my light exercises included just walking on flat surfaces. And then eventually we'll work it up to steps, stairs. I'll probably try a faster pace. So as this was going on and I was doing my rehab at home, I found my chest pain started again, the shortness of breath. It all came back again. But yet I couldn't figure out why, because although my bridge hadn't been unroofed, but I had the bypass surgery, so I was getting sufficient blood now to the areas where I wasn't. So I couldn't work it out. It was very disappointed because I thought that I've spent all this money now, and yet it seems like the operation didn't work. It failed. So my consultant here in London was very concerned. So they've put me back into angiographies, which are, mind you, are very painful. And the prep to get ready for an angiography is not easy at all. So then what we did was they did an umpteen amount of tests from ECGs, CT scans, blood tests. And then now I'm at a stage where I do think I'm getting back to normal, but my bridge hasn't been unroofed. And it's only a matter of time that I might not be here anymore. The problem with my kind of condition is we tend to go in our sleep. So that's my story. I'm Bobby Ibrar, and I'm based in London.